All right, guys, I wanted to do one more video tonight because a lot of stuff is like it's really been sticking to me lately as I go through like a historical perspective, especially concerning the rise of like Nazi Germany, their connection with Zionism before the war even started, and then during the war and after. And what is produced for mankind in general across the globe, right? Because like when it comes down to it, there's a very simple and true comparison between Nazis and Zionists, right? And that one big thing is they're both ethno-supremacist or racial supremacist fascist, right? Ethno-supremacist fascist. That is what they are, both groups. And I have notes, that's why I'm looking down, because it's a lot. There's a lot of stuff to do, but you have to look into a lot of stuff. There's a big comparison, like Hitler came into power through acts of terrorism. Blowing up the Reichstag, for example, was kind of it is what solidified his position into getting into power, blowing up the Reichstag. And then you have the groups, you have the Haganah, the Irgun, and the Lehi, and they were all terrorist groups that it was their actions that helped form the state of Israel. And there's all countless terrorist acts against Great Britain, several against the United States, and all over the region, right? Before the war really kicked off, World War II, before it really kicked off, the Zionists and Hitler, they had conversations and they had agreements. It's called the Havarta Agreement, or what we translate as the transfer agreement. Basically making a deal. This is oversimplifying everything a lot, but they made a deal. The Zionists said, look, do what you want, basically, but we just want this, a certain amount of people and a certain amount of treasure so that we can go and take over Palestine and make it our own country, right? And I understand that they wanted their own nation, because what other group in the world has been persecuted for the last thousands of years? What, 2, 3, 4,000 years, however long it's been, at least 2,000 years, and never had their own place in the world since the death of Christ, right? And I get that. I get that, wanting to fight to secure your own land and everything, and calling it, saying that, going back to the Holy Land where the original Israelis are from. But you look at it now, and all of the genetic data, the solid hard science genetic data, and the research going back to it, the Jews today, right, the Jewish people today are not the genetic descendants of the original people of that land. The Palestinians are, right? So the claim that they're taking their land back or whatever, well, that's the vast majority, if not probably almost all, if not all, they don't have genetic inheritance of that area, right? So you got to look at the perspectives, right? The so-called Jews, right? That aren't actually real genetically inherited Jewish people, they made a deal with the devil in order to take over Palestine and make it their own place, and then they solidified it through countless acts of terrorism. The USS Liberty, what was it? Was it 67 or something like that? That was just the tip of the iceberg, dude. That was the tip of the iceberg. All right. And the state was formed. It was 48? The state of Israel was formed in I believe it was 1948 or 1952. I'm pretty positive it's one of those. Fact check me if you want, but I know it was in that time frame. Let's see. And like basically what this comes down to, what it circulates down to, is it's showing like the same patterns, right? The insanity of power politics and or war based or violence or control through violence, that mankind for generations, for millennia, have been going through, and we still have not learned that lesson. And I think a big part of like them hiding all the stuff about other intelligent entities, that we're the only ones in the world, or I'm sorry, we're the only ones in this universe that are intelligent species, and trying to push that ridiculous narrative to me. You know, it goes into that centralizing control and power through fear, and domination, instead of finding a path to all work together and accept each other, right? There's a great documentary that it's called Hellstorm, and it is so well documented, and it comes from the German perspective of World War II, and the horrendous things that Great Britain and the U.S. did to Germany. Like the shit that Churchill and Eisenhower did to the Germans was despicable. Like the bombing of Dresden was just one, right? There was, I think it was 14 or 16 of like major towns and cities that there was not a lot of military there. It wasn't military targets. It was decimating the civilian population, for the reason to have them turn against their own military and government, through acts of terror. I mean, that's what it comes down to. And the death camps that Eisenhower did, and the shit that Churchill did, the shit that the Russians did to the Germans. My God, I can't remember. It was a Zionist that was head of their of the Russian propaganda unit, and they dropped leaflets, and they made an announcement to their Mongolian unit, basically take the girls and women as your spoils of war, and there was mass rapes and murders and just all kinds of disgusting, terrible shit. And the U.S. and Great Britain were guilty of it as well. But that one was the worst of all of it, right? But the purposely starving out all the German POWs and all that stuff, and torturing them by starvation and ridicule, when when it came to American POWs, I think it was well over 90% of Americans that were returned to safety, and they were treated decently, right? As decent as prisoner of war could be, but by the Germans, right? That's a historical fact that not a lot of people want to look at. And again, I'm not defending fucking Nazis or Hitler. They got they got what they fucking deserved. That's for sure. But it's just the point of it all. It comes down to look at what war does to us, right? Look at what a world of deception and lies and violence has led us to, and how easily the majority of the public is manipulated through this extremely powerful media and the indoctrination through our schools and media, and how easy it is to divide the public over I'd say medium and small issues, as compared to like the larger pictures, right? Like abortion is always a big thing. Immigration, let's see, certain like economic policies, but y'all get what I'm saying, right? You get what I'm saying? Those are big issues, but for the whole picture, you know, it doesn't cover shit, because they make everybody so focused on such the minute details on whichever side you stand, or on those issues. They get us so focused and infighting with each other over the minute details of all that stuff, that we are distracted from seeing what's actually happening, right? You know, because it's the same thing. Name me a politician since JFK, right? After JFK, name me a politician on either side of the political spectrum that did not do things that gave major advantages to banks and financials, right? Who didn't push major wars, who weren't warmongers, and who didn't push all these terrible things that we're getting out of the power politics spectrum and the corruption that's coming through it, like drug, human, and arms trafficking, or proxy wars. And I mean, yeah, there are too many proxy wars for me to even think of right now. All of Latin America, all of Africa, all of Southeast Asia, you can name every single country in those regions, every single one of them. And it has, most of them have had a coup pulled on them, or more than one coup, from the CIA or from Western intelligence services. France, Great Britain, right? All of them. Every fucking single one. Africa too. Africa, Southeast Asia, Latin America, right? Don't get it twisted. That is fact, right? And we have to make those comparisons, like going, and that's just a comparison to see with Zionism and Nazism, right? Just to see how it has infected us, right? And we got to remember Project Paperclip too. We brought in some of the worst goddamn Nazis that there were, and some of the worst monsters that humanity has created ever, and put them in power in the United States and let them start running shit. I mean, look at the companies that were supporting both sides of the war too. That's a huge thing. The banks and the companies. Let's see, IBM. Oh, that's a big one. What about the pharmaceutical companies that came out of Nazis? I believe Pfizer's one of them. Bayer, Monsanto. I believe all those have a bunch of Nazi influence. NASA is a huge one. Werner von Braun, right? You had them going up and getting power within the U.S. government and within our society in so many ways. Then you had U.S. like I said, you had IBM, Standard Oil of New Jersey. I think it was New Jersey, Standard Oil of New Jersey. You had one of the branches of the Federal Reserve. I believe both Ford and GM, like they all supported the Nazis in the war through production as well. Like a lot of that stuff got turned into things for the war, for the Nazis. And it was an American company that had the patent of Zyklon B, which is the gas that they use to exterminate some of the Jews in some of the places, in their death camps, during the Holocaust. So we just have to remember all this stuff that was going on, and also look, now that was just like the Nazis part of it, but now let's look at the Zionists and their influence in America, right? We can start with the what are they called? The is it the ACLU or it's the ADL, the Anti-Defamation League, right? The ADL, they have representatives for every single senator and congressman in the United States government, right? I think Matt Gaetz was one of them that didn't accept them, and then like maybe one or two more recently, and that's it. The rest have representatives of the ADL. And look at what the ADL did, like from their inception. Look at who they protected. Leo Frank. Look at Leo Frank, dude. Um, I'm glad it happened in the South. Let's cowboy country. We don't fuck around. I love that. He raped and murdered a 13-year-old girl in one of his factories, then tried to blame it on like a black dude that worked for him, and tried to push the racial cord towards that. And the ADL, which was called something else at the time. I don't remember off the top of my head what the name was. It started as a different name. That was one of the first guys that they tried to protect. A pedophile, murdering rapist. And then, like, later, it was like in the 80s, they tried to come back and have the state government, Georgia that all this happened in, or Alabama? So many details. They tried to say, they tried to get the stain off of Leo Frank's name, and basically it came down to where they were like, yeah, we won't turn over the verdict, but we'll, just to make you assholes happy, we'll say that Leo Frank wasn't that bad of a guy. But they couldn't turn over the verdict because all the evidence was there. There was no way to do it. And that's who they chose to protect. But thank God, thank God it was in the South, because the people of the South weren't having that bullshit. I'll tell you what. Oh, they were trying to get them off and have a after you get convicted and then you put in a motion to have like a retrial or whatever. I can't remember what that is. I'm exhausted today, so some vocabulary slipping. But anyways, they were trying to do that for him, and the people of the township in the good old South, they said nope. They broke into that fucking place, took him out of that jail cell, and hung that son of a bitch in the street, exactly what he deserved. Except they didn't torture him first, sadly. Yeah. Well, I'm actually against that. I am against that, as much as sometimes I fantasize about the worst monsters in the world meeting a terrible death, just like all the things that they've imposed on other people. I know that's wrong. But like the ultimate thing is, like, when it comes down to it, war, power politics, and ruling by blackmail, deception, and lies. This is what it leads to. We all become monsters in those environments. It doesn't matter who you are. If you're smack dab in the middle of those environments, and you don't have an option to escape, you become a monster. You all right? There's very few people in history who don't become monsters in those environments. And that was Jesus Christ and Buddha. Right? That was it. You can't say the Prophet Muhammad on this, because he was a big wartime guy. He murdered a lot of people. A lot of people. Right? You can say that about Jesus and Buddha. Gandhi. Right? Martin Luther King Jr. He had his faults, cheating on his wife and stuff like that, and a lot of pressure. And God bless Miss King for, like, just throwing it inside and say, like, I know it happens, whatever, but this is for the greater good of the people, and I love you for who you are. God bless her from the grave, or out of the grave. God bless him. Even people like during that time, like Malcolm X, he was very militant at first, and after he took his pilgrimage to Israel, and all that stuff, when he saw the love that all Muslims had, no matter what they looked like, every shade. He saw Muslims of every shade, from the darkest to the lightest, black, brown, red, yellow, white. He saw them all, and he saw all the shared love in between them. That changed his perspective. And then when he started coming together with Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., and they were going to combine forces, that's when they started murdering. That's when the FBI with COINTELPRO, the CIA was involved as well, but that's when they started murdering, right? And our, some of our most blessed, sacred leaders of the United States of America, pushing for the equality and freedom of mankind, that's when they got murdered. As they say, no good deed goes unpunished. And This is part of our choice now, you know, accept that if we keep pushing this narrative, if we just keep letting our governments and the intelligence agencies get away with using deception and all this foulness to divide the people spiritually, mentally, emotionally, politically, if we keep allowing this to happen, we're never going to get past us being the animals that we are showcasing ourselves to be today, right? And it's time to get past that. It is time to do it. We have the option. And not only that, now no one believes that we're at a fulcrum right now. No one believes our governments anymore. No one, you know, a few idiots, but like the vast majority of the public, they have no trust. You know, they were stupid letting the Epstein thing go out. They were stupid with the COVID-19 thing and the vaccinations that woke so many people up. And there's more to get to, right? The Russian thing right now, the Russia-Ukraine thing, that it's kind of playing on this, and we see like how animalistic things are and how corrupt things are. You know, a shitload of those weapons that were going to Ukraine, they're in Mexico in the cartel's hands right now. Fact. You know, all those generals and so many people, you know, they just started making all kinds of millions and millions of dollars. I wonder how they made that money, you know? You know, you look back at the ridiculous exit of our military from Afghanistan. Was it 21 or 22? I think it was 2022 with Biden. And they left, what, $80 billion of hardware behind. And I called it out at that time. I wonder where those weapons are going to show up. Well, look at the chaos and madness going on in the Middle East right now. How many of our weapons are killing all those people right now? On the Israeli and the Hamas side. The Yemeni side, the Syrians, all of it, the whole area. How many of those are from because of the shitty distraction that Biden did, getting our troops out of Afghanistan? The idiocracy behind it. So just like, it's just food for thoughts, right? Nazism, Zionism, same thing, different name. Ethno-supremacist fascists. They're ethno-supremacist fascists. That's what it is. And they're still pushing on the zero-sum game of power politics and rule by deception and division. That's where we're at now. But they can't hide the revelations of the people that the people have had, and now like the vast majority of distrust that most people have with the government. We're finally starting to wake up, but power through it. The times that are coming, you have to keep this stuff in mind when the economy crashes and everything is going to hell. It's going to be hard to think about when we're trying just to survive and keep food on the table and keep the rent paid. But it has to be considered in order for us to move forward and finally get to our next stage of evolution, rising consciously and spiritually, right? Having empathy and love for everybody across the globe, no matter their culture and everything else. And of course, we can't let the bad and the criminals, no matter what society, no matter what culture they're from, we can't let the worst of the worst get away without being confronted and punished in some way. But when it comes down, we have to do it humanely, and we have to be better than them when it happens. We can't just go back to the patterns that they're doing because they did it to us, right? We can't do that. Because if we do that, then we start the cycle again, and we're living in the same curse. So it's that time, right? It is that time. We're at the fulcrum. Everything is collapsing in on itself. Make your decision and work hard towards it, because this is going to be one. It's already a hell of a fight, but we're just scratching the surface now, right? power politics, deception, lies, blackmail, war. It turns us all into animals if we allow it. If we just get too mad or too emotional and don't see what's really happening and change it, it's going to turn us all into beasts. Don't let it happen. We have the greatest opportunity humanity has ever had to get past this madness and move on. Let's do it. Love you all.